got to be easy. Everything is alright. Got me feeling like nah, 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 nah. And you got to be easy. Everything is alright. Got me feeling like nah, 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 nah.
Alright guys, we have our week 1 math packet here, and I'm about to walk you through step by step for each one of these pages in here to give you the answers. Welcome to our fractions lesson. Let's get started. We're just going to do a brief overview right now so you guys can do a little bit better on those worksheets in your packets. So let's start off with a basic question. What is a fraction? Well, a fraction is a piece or a couple of pieces of a whole shape. This shape could be almost anything. For your packets today, we're going to be working with rectangles, squares, and circles. So how do we read fractions? Well, fractions normally look like this. There's a number at the top, and then a line, and a number at the bottom. So that number at the top is called the numerator. The numerator is how many pieces are shaded. So you will have a whole figure that's separated into pieces. The numerator tells you how many of those pieces are colored in or shaded. The number on the bottom is called the denominator. The denominator shows you how many pieces there are in the whole. So if you had a circle that was split up into 2 different pieces, then your denominator would be 2. So now the question says shade in the area to show 1/2. So I have gone in and shaded each of these figures as 1/2. Remember, the numerator says 1, so I'm shading in 1 out of the 2 pieces that are in these holes. What about a quarter? Let's look at that fraction for a second. The numerator is 1, which means we need 1 piece shaded. The denominator is 4, which means each one of these shapes needs to be split up into 4 equal parts. So let's do our best here. Alrighty guys, so now that I have separated each one of these holes into 4 equal parts, we can finish the fraction. So the numerator says 1, so we need 1 out of all 4 of these pieces shaded. So I have colored in 1 out of the 4 pieces in each one of these holes. What about 1/3? How would you split some of these shapes up into 1/3? There we go. So these 3 holes have now been split up into thirds. Remember, the denominator says 3, so that means that each of these holes has to have 3 different pieces. So they're asking us to shade 1 out of the 3 parts. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and shade 1 out of the 3 parts of each of these shapes. If you look, the shapes inside the hole are not always the same, but it doesn't matter as long as they are equal in size. There you go. Each one of those shapes has been split up into 1/3. So go ahead and take a look at this page to help you review what 1/2 is, 1/3 is, and 1/4 is. Now we're going to do some review on your own. So take a look at these shapes here. Pause the video and try and write down the fraction for each one of these shapes. Remember, the numerator, or the number on the top, is how many pieces are shaded. The denominator is how many pieces there are inside the whole entire shape. So pause this video, and when you come back, I'll have the answers for you. Alright guys, so here are your answers. How many of them did you get right? Hopefully you got most of them right. If this makes sense to you, go ahead and continue this video to check your answers on the packets that were given to you last week. If you need to go back and review this part one more time, feel free to do so. Alright, so our first page is this fractions cut and paste to match. We just watched that video on fractions telling you guys the difference between a numerator and a denominator. So now what we're going to do is we're going to cut all of these out and put them where they go and match them up. If you do not have scissors or glue at your house, that's totally okay. You can rip these up and just match them up. It doesn't have to be glued down. So now that I have all my answers cut out here, I'm going to take one at a time and try and match it up with the correct fraction. So let's take this first one. This says 6/8. Remember, the denominator is how many different sections are going to be in the shape. So I need to find a shape that has 8 total sections. So here's the problem. I found 2. There's one right here, and there's one right here. So now we have to go to the numerator. The numerator tells us how many of these squares need to be shaded. So out of these 2 squares, I need to find the one that has 6 shaded squares. I think this one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 total divisions and 6 that are shaded. So the answer is going to go here. My next one is 3/4 or 3/4. So again, the first thing I'm going to do is look for a rectangle that has 4 divisions. So I see 4 here, 4 here, and 4 here. Now we have to look at the numerator. The numerator tells us that there's going to be 3 shaded regions. So this one has 4 sections, but only 2 are shaded. This one has 4 sections, but only 1 is shaded. This one has 4 sections, and 3 are shaded. So our answer is going to go here. Here's your next one, 4/6. So I'm looking for 6 pieces overall, and 4 of them are shaded. So I have 6 pieces here, I have 6 pieces here, and I have 6 pieces here. I'm looking for 4 that are shaded. So out of these 3, I see that this one has 4 shaded regions. The shaded pieces do not have to be all together. They can be in different sections of the shape. So overall, there are 6 regions and 4 of them are shaded. So now that we've done these 3, you guys have a pretty good idea of what needs to happen. So I'm going to match up the rest of our answers and glue them down so you can check your answers at home.
I remember like it's yesterday, back when I was Westchester made, back when I was like 5'5", and none of these girls was getting next to me. When my voice.
Now you get to check your answers. How did you do? Did you get most of them right? Or is this a concept that you're still struggling with and might need to work on again in our next packet? Here's your next paper. Again, it's all about fractions. This time, you're going to look at all the different fractions that are on the page, match them up with the fraction over here, and then use that color to color the piece. I'm going to start with the sun and the cloud. So let's start with this big piece right here. This says 1/3. So I'm looking for 3 pieces with 1 of them shaded. Here, I see this square has 3 pieces and 1 of them shaded. So this would be 1/3. I'm actually going to write that next to this square so I can remember that this fraction is 1/3. Now I'm going to color this cloud blue. Now I'm going to move on to this bottom part of the sun right here. This says 1/4 or 1/4. So I'm looking over here for the shape that has 4 pieces with 1 of them shaded. Well, this has 4 pieces, but there's more than 1 shaded, so it's not that one. This one has 4 pieces and 1 of them is shaded. Remember, for fractions, it doesn't matter what shape the pieces are as long as they are all equal. So even though this isn't split up like we normally see a square split up into 4, there are still 4 equal pieces and 1 of them is shaded. So this shape is 1/4. I'm going to write that next to it so I can remember. Now I can color this piece yellow because it matches our fraction. So what I'm going to do now that you guys get the general idea of how to do this paper is I'm going to write all of the fractions on the side over here and then color it in so you can check your answers.
Rez is kicking here for old times, like we was way back in '09. Look, right back when we had Danny and the crew, and my mom came through every showtime saying live easy. Look at this crowd, 5 years out, you gon' talk about now. Believe me, don't you ever look down. Keep your head up and your feet on the ground, cause you got to be easy. Everything is alright. Got me feeling like nah, 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 nah.
Alright, so here's your next fraction coloring page, which is very similar to the one that we just did. The big difference is that these are all circles now instead of squares. Remember, for fractions, it doesn't matter what the overall shape is of the whole, it just has to be broken up into equal sections. So I'm going to start off this one by going through and labeling each one of my fractions on the side to make it a little easier to color. Let's talk about this top one. We're going to color whatever this is purple. Let's start by how many sections there are in the circle as a whole. So I see 1, 2, 3 sections. So my denominator is going to be 3. Now I only see one of the sections that's shaded right here, so that's going to be my numerator. So this fraction is 1/3. Now let's look at this one. Whatever this is, we're going to color that pink. So again, look at your whole shape. How many sections does your whole shape have? Good job, it has 4. Now how many of those are shaded? Just 1. So this is going to be 1 out of 4, or 1/4. So I'm going to continue doing this down here and follow along. If you have any questions, remember you can rewind this video, pause it, or email me after this video and I'd be happy to explain it further. If you're using glue, don't forget to put the cap on. So now that I have all of my fractions labeled, I'm going to start coloring this picture. Go ahead and stay tuned for the final product to see if you got your answers right.
Thinking, man, if we could just do that. If we could get a song up on fresh new tracks. If Wallow doesn't call the cops. If 101 had locks. If Ho Tongue didn't get so packed. Woo! But Jerry and LP, we were hungry. And ever since they heard me free, people love me. 64 bars deep on them RZA beats. In the backseat of the town and country. No time for stress, I'm blessed. I confess, I've been pressed. Trying to turn all of they nose into yes. I'm obsessed with being the best. Ain't no time for rest. I'ma turn life's checkmates into cash checks. Be easy. Everything's alright. Got me feeling like nah, 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 nah. You got to be easy.
Look at that chickie, they're so cute. So here's what your end product should look like for your next color by fraction. Go ahead and double check your work. And if you notice a mistake that I've made, then you need to let me know. Make sure you send me an email or message me on Blooms after this video if you see anything wrong at all. Alright guys, that concludes our last fraction piece. It is now break time. So go ahead, stand up, pause this video, and go find a fraction in your house. See if you can find something that's split up into equal parts with one part missing or shaded. Don't forget, you can ask a friend, ask a sibling, or ask your parents if you need help. So pause this video and come back when you're ready. Alright guys, so for this one, we're going to focus on our map skills. So it says, directions, use the map and key to complete the grid and answer the questions. Well, here is your map and here is your key. The key is super important because if you don't know what this symbol means, you get to go over to the key and realize that that means it is a tree. So, in my last video, I kind of explained the first one to you, the play area. So the play areas look like this. There's one play area here and one play area here. This play area is at E2. This play area is at B4. So we need to go through and do all the rest of these and figure out where they are on the grid. Each one should have both the letter and a number. So let's start with our trash can first. It says name the location of each item on the map. So we're going to start with the trash can. The trash can, let's look at our key. The trash can looks like this. So I need to find this on our map. All right, so I found it. It's right here. So now I need to find out where on my grid this belongs. So let's check. Is the trash can under A? No. Is it through B? No. Is it in column C? No. Is it in column D? Yes, this trash can's in column D. So I'm gonna write a D right here because that's what column it's in. Now we need to know which row. So I'm gonna go from the trash can directly this way to get my number, and my number is 1. So the trash can is located in D1. The next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna locate the park bench. The park bench, let's go to our key. Park bench looks like this. So let's find the park bench on our grid. Can you find it? Good, the park bench is right here. So now I need to know what column and what row park bench is in. So I'm going to start with the park bench and go down, and I see that it's right under the letter C. So I'm going to write C right here. That's what column it's in. Now we need to know what row it's in. So starting at the bench and going this way, you can see we're still in row number 1. So the park bench is in C1. Now that we've done the first 2, I'm going to do these 3 and you're going to check your answers. So now we've got all of these taken care of. Remember that the tree actually showed up 3 different times, so I had to write 3 different coordinates for that item. Now let's go down to the bottom. The bottom is interesting. It says add the following items to the map key by drawing a picture and labeling them. Draw the items anywhere on the map and name the location. So that's a lot of directions. Let's break that down. The first thing it says to do is add the following items to the map key by drawing a picture and labeling them. So let's start with that. We have 4 more things that we need to draw and label on this map key. So let's get going. Now that I have drawn and labeled all of these items in the map key, now I'm going to put them somewhere on the grid. I'm going to make sure that I use a space that hasn't been taken by something else. So I'm going to start with the restroom. I'm going to put the restroom right here next to the tree and next to the water fountain, because sometimes people have to go to the bathroom after they look at a water fountain. Now I'm going to put down my cotton candy. I think cotton candy would be fun to have right next to ice cream. So I'm going to put it right here. Next, I'm going to put my bike trail somewhere. I think the bike trail would be cool to have right next to this right here, which is the bridge. So I'm going to put it right here. Last thing, I had to put balloons. Well, I'm going to challenge myself. I really like balloons, so I'm going to put 2 different balloons somewhere on this map. Alrighty guys, on to the next one. This is all about counting coins. So I'm going to read these directions really quickly. It says, Mom went to the gardening store. She has 98 cents to spend. She wants to buy 3 items. Show 6 different ways she can spend her money. So like I said in the last video, you have to figure out what combination of these things can equal up to 98 cents or less, because you don't have to spend all the money that you have. So this is a little bit of a trickier one. So I have a sheet of scratch paper over here that I'm going to use to add up all of my items. So let's get started. I'm going to make sure that I do most of my work on this scratch paper before I put my answers over here, just to keep my mess separate from my actual answers. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw my hundreds, tens, and ones chart. That way I can keep all of my place values separate as I'm adding these numbers up. So now I'm going to pick my first 3. I know we're adding, so I'm going to make sure I put an addition symbol in my equation. Let's see what we can do first. I think it would be cool if she bought the hose, the seeds, and the gardening fork. So the hose is 56 cents, so I'm going to write that right here. The seeds are 9 cents, and the garden fork is 22 cents. So now that I have all of my numbers, I'm going to add them up. 9 plus 6 is 15. Add 2 more, 16, 17. Now remember, we can't put 17 down here because it has 2 digits. So you have to carry the 10 up and put the 7 down here. Now I have to add everything in the tens column. Well, 5 plus 2 is 7, but I have to add that 1 more, so that makes it 8. So my answer is 87. Now, is 87 less than 98? It is, you're right. So we could get these 3 things for Mom at the gardening store. So now I'm going to write the title of all 3 of these things down right here, and then write down the total amount that she's going to spend. Now here's the next part. It's asking for change. When we're talking about money, change is what you get back. So she had a total of 98 cents to spend, but we only spent 87. So we need to do some subtraction to figure out how much money Mom is going to get back. So let's go ahead and write our hundreds, tens, and ones chart. But remember, this time we are subtracting. So with subtraction, you always start with the bigger number. So our bigger number in this case is 98. So I'm going to write 98 up at the top. Now we're trying to figure out the difference between how much she had and and how much she spent. So she spent 87 cents. So now I'm going to subtract starting with the 1 to see how much money mom's going to get back at the store. So mom's going to get 11 cents back when she buys all 3 of these items. So that's what I'm going to write under change is 11 cents. Let's do another one. I'm going to write another hundreds, tens, and ones chart to make sure I can keep all of my numbers separate. This time, I think it would be cool if we did the wheelbarrow, the trowel, and the watering can. So let's add those 3 up and see if mom can buy them. So the wheelbarrow is 72 cents. The trowel is 13 cents. And the watering can is 37 cents. Now I'm going to make sure I write my operation. We are adding. Now we're going to start with the ones. So let's add all of this up here. I know that 7 plus 3 is 10, and 10 plus 2 is 12. Now I can't put 12 down here because that's too much for one place value. So I have to take that 10 and put it up over here. Then I can put the 2 down here because that's in the ones place. Now let's do it again. I have 7 plus 1 plus 3. Well, 1 plus 3 is 4, and 4 plus 7 is 11, and 11 plus 1 is 12. Hold on, we can't write 12 down here. So we have to put another 1 in the hundreds and a 2 down here. Now let's move to the hundreds column. We have 1 here and nothing else. So our answer is 1. Now let's go back and see if she has enough money to buy these 3 tools. Mom has 98 cents to spend. With these 3 tools, she's spending 122 cents or $1.22. Does she have that much? No, she doesn't. So she can't buy these 3 combinations of things. So I can't write them down over here because they cost too much money. So now that you kind of get the idea of how this works, I'm going to show you on my scratch paper a couple of other ways you can do this. Remember, your answers don't have to be exactly the same as mine or in the exact same order as mine, but you do need to make sure that the 3 numbers that you're adding up come to 98 cents or less. If you don't spend as much money as you have, make sure you find out how much change you need to get back when you go to the register. I started off by writing a bunch of hundreds, tens, and ones charts to do my math on, so I don't have to stop and do that every time, because sometimes that makes my brain kind of hurt and I forget what I'm doing. So now I'm going to start making different combinations of numbers to see if I can get to 98 cents or less.
Everything is alright. Got me feeling like nah, 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 nah. This is for 156 and for 4850. Gone back when we were just kids, taking trains into the city, singing nah, 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 nah. Let them know.
You got to be easy. Everything is alright.
Hey.
Got me feeling like nah, 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 nah.
Yep.
Well, you got to be easy. Everything is alright.
Everything's alright.
Got me feeling like nah, 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 nah.
So here are my final answers, guys. Remember, your answers don't have to be the same as mine or in the same order as mine. All that matters is that each one of these totals is at or below 98 cents. If it's below, then you need to do some subtraction to figure out how much change your mom needs to get from the gardening store. Well done! We have been at this for 20 minutes, so it is now time to take another break. If you've been sitting in the same spot for this entire video, or even for the entire day, guys, it's time to start moving. Go ahead and grab that PE packet that Mrs. Z gave you, or just go ahead, get up, go outside, turn around, come back down. Just move locations. Maybe you need to go look out a different window or look at a different wall, but it's time to get up and move. Pause this video and come back when you're ready. On to our next one, which is time. So now I know we haven't done a lot of time in class, so here's what's gonna happen. There are hundreds of apps that you can download on your phone, on your tablet, or even videos you can watch on YouTube to help give you a general idea of what's happening when it comes to time. Here's the things you need to know. there are two hands on the clock. The big hand, which is normally blue, means it's going to be the minutes. Little hand, which is normally red on these clocks, is telling you what the hour is. Each one of the numbers on a clock represents 5 minutes. So if you skip count by fives, you can figure out what time it is every time the blue hand hits one of those numbers. For example, it is 1 o'clock on this clock right now because the minute hand is at the 12 and the hour hand is at the 1. If I press next, it's going to go to 1:05. Both the minute hand and the hour hand are pointing at the 1. The minute hand has moved from the 12 to the 1, which means 5 minutes have passed. If I press next again, this is going to be 1:10. That hour hand is slowly going to move in between the 1 and the 2 over the course of the hour. The minute hand is now directly on the 2, which means we have gone to 10 minutes past the hour. This app is cool because you get to keep pressing next and watch that minute hand go around in increments of 5 to show you the time. Here's a trick to help you remember what time it is when the hour hand is in between the two numbers. What you have to do is you have to take the smaller of the two numbers. If this hour hand is in between the 1 and the 2, 1 is smaller. This time is 1:50. Now if I press next again, my hour hand is now in between the 2 and the 3. Which one of those numbers is smaller? You're right, the 2. So this clock right now is showing 2:20. So remember, if you're confused about that hour hand or the smaller hand, just remember to take the smaller of the two numbers that it's in between. I'm going to use these two colors to help distinguish between my minute hand and my hour hand. You don't have to do that at home. You can just use a pencil. If you're only using a pencil, remember the minute hand must be longer than the hour hand in order for your answer to be counted as correct. So let's start right here with the very first one, 12:25. I'm going to use my app to help us out for the first couple of times, and then I'm going to get going on my own. So right now, I'm going to press back to get to where this clock says 12:25. So now I want to look at the position of my hands. Number 1, my red hand, which is the hour hand, is in between the 12 and the 1. This is the only time where that trick I just taught you doesn't work, because 12 is a lot bigger than 1. So you have to remember that when the hour hand is in between the 12 and the 1, you have to go back to the 12. So I'm going to come over here now and draw my hour hand just after the 12. The minute hand, which is the longer hand, needs to be at 25. So you can count by fives to get down to 25. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. So my minute hand, or the longer hand, needs to be pointed directly on the 5. Perfect. You just made your first time. Let's go to the next one and try the same strategies. I've restarted my app at 1 o'clock. We need to go to 1:45. Cool. So now we're at 1:45. Let's take a look at the position of the hour hand, or the red hand, first. Seeing as it's not quite 2 o'clock yet, this hour hand is still in between the 1 and the 2. So that's where I'm going to put mine on my clock. Now we just skip count by fives around our clock until we get to 45. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45. 45 minutes past the hour. My minute hand is going to be pointing directly towards the 9. So I need to do that on my clock over here. Awesome. That time now says 1:45. We're going to do this next one without the use of our app. So I'm going to take this away and we're going to focus on doing this together. So I'm going to start with my hour hand. The hour hand is the smaller of the two. Now this says 8:35. So that's somewhere in the middle between 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock. So I'm going to put my hour hand right in the middle in between 8 and 9. Now we're going to see how many minutes past the hour. So I need to get to 35. So I'm going to start counting by fives until I get to 35. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35. So if you want 35 minutes past the hour, your minute hand needs to be pointed directly at the number 7. Our next one is 6:05. So that's right after 6 o'clock. So I know that the 6 is down here, so are my red hand or my shorter hand or my hour hand needs to be pointed almost right after the 6 because it's just after the hour. So I'm gonna point my little hand almost directly at the 6. Now for my minutes, it's 6:05. So we actually only have to move one space to 5. So my minute hand is gonna be pointed directly at the 1. Now let's go to our next one. This is 2:15. So starting with my hour hand, 2:15 is right after 2 o'clock. It's in between 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock. So my hour hand is gonna go just after the 2. Then for my minutes, we're looking for 15 minutes. So starting again at the 12, we're gonna hop, and each one of those hops is skip counting by 5s. So 5, 10, 15. Oh, we have to stop there. The minute hand should be facing the 3, which means 15. Remember, if this is frustrating you and you really don't understand, go ahead and take a break. Go look up some new videos on YouTube or get an older brother or sister to help you. This is something we haven't really gone over yet, so if you don't understand it, that's totally fine. Answers?
Oh, you got to be easy. Everything's alright. You got me feeling like nah, 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 nah. Oh, you got to be easy. Everything's alright. Got me feeling like nah, 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 nah. Oh, you got to be easy.
So here are all your answers for your time paper. Remember, if this doesn't make sense to you and you've watched a couple of videos and you watched me and you still don't get it, that's okay. Just remember to take a break, maybe come back and try it again tomorrow. Or take a break and come back at it next week. It's all good. Here comes the scary multiplication. Alrighty guys, now we've hit some of the harder numbers. So I'm gonna write 11 plus 11 on this paper. Remember, if it helps you, don't forget to write your 10s and your 1s to keep everything straight. So when you're adding 11 plus 11, 1 plus 1 is 2, and 1 plus 1 is 2. So 11 plus 11, or 11 times 2, is 22. Now let's go to the next one. I'm going to use my 10s and my 1s again, and we are adding. The next one is 12 plus 12. Well, I know 2 plus 2 is 4, and 1 plus 1 is 2. So the answer to 12 times 2 is 24. Here's the cool thing about multiplication. In 3rd grade, you only have to know your facts up to 12. So we have now done 1 times 2, 2 times 2, 3 times 2, 4 times 2, all the way up to 12 times 2. The rest of this paper is just the same thing over and over again, but this time they're not in order. So go ahead and finish the rest of this paper, pause the video, and then come back to see what the answers are. All right guys, here are your answers for the rest of that multiplication paper. If you see a mistake, go ahead, tell me. Sometimes I'm not always perfect either, and I shouldn't expect you to be perfect. So go ahead and check these answers. If this is making sense to you, that's awesome. If you need some more help with this, that's okay. Remember that multiplication isn't really a thing that we learn in 2nd grade. We're trying to introduce you to this by adding 2 of the same numbers, or otherwise known as doubles facts. So good job on this paper. We only got 1 left. Erase, erase, erase. Before we start these crazy arrays, we need to go over one of the fundamental things that we've been learning about arrays. The difference between a row and a column. When we do arrays, you need to pay attention to what they're asking you to do. If it says 3 rows of 5, then you need to have 3 separate rows with 5 in each column. I remember that right before we left, some of you were pretty confused over the wording between a row and a column. So hopefully when we go over this worksheet, you'll kind of get back into gear and remember a little bit. Here we go! The directions say draw dots to show the multiplication problem. Write the addition and multiplication sentences for each set. The first one has been done for you. So let's go ahead and look at the example. It says 5 rows of 3. So you're looking for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows. Then it says of 3. So there's going to be 3 in each row. Then down here in the smaller box, they want you to write the addition and the multiplication sentence. Remember, when we do arrays, it's repeated addition. So they chose to do 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3, which is 15. When you do your multiplication, remember you just take the two numbers that they're asking you to do and put the multiplication sign in the middle, because you're doing 3 5 times. Let's go ahead and work on our next one. It says 2 rows of 5. If the rows and columns are still kind of messing with you, make sure you write the difference up here. So they want 2 rows of 5. So I'm going to make sure that I just put 2 lines here because I know I need 2 different rows. Now there's supposed to be 5 in each row. So I'm going to draw dots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I'm going to reread this to double check what I did was correct. It asked for 2 rows of 5. So do I have 2 rows? Yes. Do I have 5 in each row? Yes. So I have done the correct array. Now we have to do our repeated addition and our multiplication problem. So let's see, 2 rows of 5, we could do 5 plus 5. 5 plus 5 is 10. Now we just did a multiplication worksheet that had to do with doubles. So what we just did was 5 2 times, which equals 10. Let's move on to the next one. Next one says 1 row of 4. So I'm going to put a line right here because I know I only need 1 row. They want 4 in each of my rows. So I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4. So it only asked for 1 row and there's 4 in my row. So I have completed this array. Now let's do our repeated addition sentence. Because repeated addition has to have the same number over and over and over again, we can't do 4 plus 0. So what's the other way we could do a repeated addition sentence? Awesome, we could do 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1. Let's do that. Cool, so now we have to do the multiplication sentence. Remember, our two numbers are 1 and 4. So 1 times 4 is 4. Let's do one more together. This time they're asking for 2 rows of 4. So I'm going to draw my 2 lines right here to remind myself I'm doing 2 different rows, and I'm going to put 4 in each row. Remember that your array needs to resemble a rectangle or a square. You can't put your dots all over the place or it won't be considered an array. Your rows and columns have to line up. Double check. Do I have 2 rows? Yes. Do I have 4 in each of my rows? Yes. So now let's do our repeated addition sentence. Because we have more than 1 row, we can do 4 plus 4. What's the other repeated addition sentence you could use for this array? Awesome. You could do 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2. I'm going to choose 4 plus 4. I know that total is 8. Also kind of goes back to the multiplication paper that we just did. I know that 4 2 times equals 8. Alrighty guys, I'm going to finish the rest of these arrays by myself and I want you to watch me work and then check your answers when I'm done. Alright guys, that concludes our math packet for today. Now we're going to switch into reading. If you haven't taken a break yet, this is the time to do it. You've been sitting for a long time and working your brain really hard. Remember, we're only asking for 1 hour of schoolwork a day. So if you haven't taken one of the breaks I told you to in this video, please go take one now. See you back for reading.
Oh, you got to be easy. Everything is alright. You got me feeling like nah, 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 nah. Oh, you got to be easy.